Hello folks, and welcome to the first episode of AI X Visuals, your deep dive into tech, AI, and how it is reshaping the way we create movies, animation, photography, and visual art in general. Today we're going to unpack Stallone, Lionsgate, animation analytics, HDR AI video, and global AI film studios, and what all of this means for creators like us. So buckle up, we're looking at AI not just as a boogeyman, but as a new collaborator, and yes, sometimes a competitor in our new creative playground.
We got a pinner and suns that come in weather. So why are you
First up,
so
Sylvester
blue?
Stallone, the man whose biceps have more backstory than most directors' entire careers. He's had a wild idea. He wanted to direct a prequel to First Blood, using AI to play a youthful 18-year-old John Rambo. Yes, he wanted to be digitally de-aged, not replaced, not cloned, but stepping back into his own past. The interesting part isn't just the nostalgia, it's the creative opportunity. So if you imagine an actor taking control of their own legacy, portraying a version of themselves decades younger with all the nuances intact, but here's the balance. We don't want to lose all the authenticity of older actors. They got that grizzled face, that lived-in presence. That's irreplaceable. AI should enhance, not erase. Now, if somebody wants to take themselves and make them young for a film or two, I think that's interesting use of the product. But if, it's because Stallone can't deal with the fact that he's not an 18-year-old Rambo, that's another story and another issue. Again, it doesn't have to become the rule. It can be a fun exception. So now Stallone's idea didn't end up happening, for better or for worse, but Millennium Media picked up the prequel rights, and Noah Centineo will star with Jalmari Helander directing. So I'm not sure I know those guys, but a lot of times no name, or maybe I don't know, or end up being interesting movies. So, but the fact that Stallone even considered AI as a tool is a signal that actors and creators are starting to see that AI is an opportunity, not a threat. And he is of an older generation, and you might expect his opinion on AI to be different. And interestingly, he thought it'd be something to toy with. So that's probably a good point on him. Again, it also might be because he can't let go, but we'll leave that to chance. What do you guys think? Would you watch an AI de-aged Rambo, or something's better left to memory, or totally recast as they ended up going with? Please let me know what you guys think about that. So our next story is talking about Lionsgate and Runway AI. Runway AI is, of course, the famous video generator. They are working on a generative AI model trained on Lionsgate's entire film and TV library, which is extensive. So there's hundreds of films, thousands of hours of content, and their goal is to help filmmakers storyboard, plan shots, generate VFX references faster, and essentially it's going to be like having a pre-production assistant that never sleeps. But the kicker is it's not available yet, and the question is why. So again, it came down to legal questions, copyright, actor licenses. You can't necessarily just train a model on a massive library of copyrighted material without running into some legal hurdles, and we are at the beginning of those. Actors, images, scripts, and sets all have rights attached in multitudes of contracts across multitudes of different deals. So right now it seems to be a proof of concept, but it illustrates a huge trend that studios are experimenting with AI to speed up and enhance the creative process, but continue to run up against legal barriers, which we'll keep you up to date on as they come through more. So for creators, it's fascinating, but it's also tricky, because on one hand, AI could help you visualize a concept, and that's how I do it, without waiting weeks for a previs team or whatever. On the other hand, if the model is too derivative, it risks diluting your originality, which is something we're seeing in the AI slop. So you get efficiency, but you also might get a homogenized aesthetic if you lean too heavily on the model's suggestions. Now, if you're able to prompt with a lot of your own inputs, use a lot of directions, storyboards that you've already thought through, that might lean you towards something more new and fresh. But if you're just full prompting text prompts, obviously I'd like to hear from you guys who are doing it and getting something interesting. You might run into originality problems and potentially be stuck in the AI slop area. So would you guys, or would you use an AI assistant for the pre-production process, or do you prefer to sweat it through the old school way? So I'm just asking about the pre-production process, not even the main. But I'd love to hear what you guys think about both parts of that. So our next story is at the LA Comic Con. Creator advocate Nava led a panel on protecting artists in the age of AI, discussion we've been having a lot. This was about ethics, policy, and practical protections. And the one point was that AI can ingest millions of works, but that doesn't mean it owns or should be able to replicate them without consent, which is something we've obviously heard a lot. So they discussed a concept such as transparent labeling. AI-generated work should be clearly marked, opt-in training, artists can choose where their work is used to train AI, and revenue and attribution. So if AI creates something derivative of your style, you should be credited or compensated. So this segment is particularly relevant for visual artists, animators, and photographers, because imagine putting years of your work online only to have it ingested without your say-so. So the conversation at Comic-Con wasn't just alarmist. It's about creating a framework where AI is a tool, not a theft machine. And I do appreciate them trying to engage it. I would have some issue with the revenue and attribution part, because I think it's going to be difficult. If you look at Spotify, you're already getting pennies for lots of plays. So it'd be very difficult to see, if an AI model selected your music partially, what portion of it. We can't see that deep into the model thought process. So breaking that down financially might be extraordinarily tough. And even if we get it down, it might end up using hundreds of songs for one song. What are you getting on one of those uses? 1/100th of 1/100th of one. It ends up becoming a complicated way of looking at it. Transparency labeling, I think, is fair. I think it's going to depend, and in the future we'll lose it. But I think from your own personal brand, it's always good to be transparent and authentic and explain why you're doing something, because especially in this moment, people aren't really happy with AI and they don't want it snuck in on them. So what matters most to you as far as protections? Labeling, consent, revenue, something else? I'd love to, if you share your thoughts. I know where I'm at, but I'd love to hear what you guys think. Now, a really interesting one is in animation. Now, so for all the animators, this is probably a little bit frightening or interesting, depending on where you stand. So AI analytics is being used to predict audience engagement before the production begins. So that means studios can feed in storyboards and short clips into a machine learning model and get predictions on what scenes are going to resonate. So for small creators, this is pretty huge. You can test ideas quickly, without wasted resources. But the catch is that if every move is dictated by, predicted engagement, you risk homogenizing the art. You get few surprises, less boldness, and potentially less passion. And it seems a little bit odd to have created something totally new and fresh and then stuck it into AI to check if it fits what's already been there. You might have something unique and it'll tell you that's no good. Jim Carrey, I remember speaking on the Sonic movie that he starred in originally when they had that first terrible Sonic design, which was terrible. And they ended up making a whole thing on the internet and they went back on it. Jim Carrey basically said, I don't know if it's a smart idea to start asking the audience beforehand on your art. I don't know where that leads. And I think he's generally right. I mean, in that concept, I think they were right to change it. But in general, I think it's a similar problem to what Marvel has with the extensive reshoots, focus groups. You're shooting too much for something that people may want, and you're not creating new and interesting ideas. So I think that's what we risk there. So what do you guys think, any animators? Is this something that you're worried about because now you're going to have numbers telling you, oh, you got to do this, and tighten you? Or is somebody that's a creator that's kind of trying to look at different places to go, do you think this might be a helpful tool for you to walk in that direction? I'd be interested to hear what you guys have to say on that. So our next story is Luma AI, which just released their new Ray3, which is a generative video model, integrated with Adobe Firefly. So here's the tech. It's going to output HDR video in 10, 12, and 16-bit formats, and it's going to have that deep color fidelity for rich cinematic visuals. It's also using multimodal reasoning. So basically it understands prompts in context and keeps scenes coherent. So what does this mean for creators in this model? You're going to be able to generate concept footage for pitches. You'll be able to pre-visualize scenes in games or films, or explore variations in lighting, composition, style without expensive reshoots. So it's not really replacing creativity. It's kind of giving you a sandbox to experiment in faster. Iterate, refine your vision. You can play with your ideas that you may not have a budget for. But again, if you had Ray3, what's the first thing you'd experiment with, and what are you losing? So if you're, visual lighting is a whole art form in itself. So if you can just sort of move it around in a computer, we're losing that whole segment. So that's an interesting discussion to be had. I'd love to hear what people in that arena think about this whole development. So please leave a comment if you're in that space. And then our final story is going to be a company called Animeta, which launched an AI-powered studio in Singapore. So it's not just a local story. It's got a global trend component here because so basically it's AI is putting scalable tools in the hands of small teams, letting 2 to 5 person groups produce work that may have required hundreds of employees previously. So the tool and the studio behind it is going to allow creators to automate rendering, do pre-visualization, compositioning, scale production without massive budgets, focus on passion and creative vision rather than the repetitive labor. So yeah, it disrupts traditional studio roles, but we've seen them being disrupted of late anyway. But from an artistic perspective, it's very exciting. Smaller teams can push ideas further and make more personal work without compromise. It also raises questions about the audience influence. Are these teams optimizing to predicted likes or following their instincts? So that's going to be an important question. I think it's going to develop the art world in the future. That debate is going to make interesting, conflicting and opposite art. So the outcome could be revolutionary art or homogenized content if it's misused, and I think both will be true. So if you could join the AI-powered micro studio, what would you create? I'd love to hear what your stories would be. How many of you there are in a team? Is it just you? And how would you go with it? So looking at all these stories, a few trends start to become clear as we look over the week. Creators are gaining agency. Small teams can now take ideas from concept to near production quality visuals without massive budgets. Data versus intuition. AI can predict engagement and suggest optimal choices, but if we over rely on it, we risk homogenizing the art. So audience input is obviously valuable, but it shouldn't begin to strangle creative instinct. Another theme is tools, not replacements. AI is a collaborator, not a thief, or it can be. The trick is to use it to enhance our work without erasing the unique voice of each creator. And passion over size. So 2 to 5 person teams using AI might make more heartfelt personal work than a 100-person studio divided between departments, focus groups, people that are working for a paycheck. 2 to 5 people collaborating to make their image from start to almost finish could create something new. I don't know what it'll be. Could be better, could be worse. But if we're not concerned about employment and we're considered more about the final product and its authenticity, even through AI, this could be an interesting trend. So the overarching trend, art is democratizing. AI is letting creators iterate faster, experiment more boldly, and follow their own vision. But we're going to have to resist turning every decision into a safe, data-approved choice. Too much optimization can make art bland, and think of Marvel's iterative focus group process. I bring it up again, versus a smaller team pushing bold ideas. So the takeaway is embrace AI as a tool, or at least understand it. Trust your creative instincts, keep your teams tight, and let your ideas breathe. Passion and precision together, that's where the future of visual creation lies. So that's it today for the deep dive. These aren't just tech stories, they're signals for how we'll share, make, and experience art for the next decade and more. So I appreciate you listening to AI X Visuals. Please leave a comment, follow, like. We'll be updating you every week, and we want to get an open discussion going. So I appreciate you sticking around, and I'll see you next week. Thanks.